Shaun here, the behavior change coach, back for another episode of Always Another Game. Today, we are going inside the mind of a former soldier, a CrossFit athlete, and somebody who competed in a 5-day ultra marathon across the Arctic Circle. With me today, I have Daryl Green. Daryl, how's it going?
Yeah, it's all good, Shaun. Thank you, mate. How about you?
No, I'm really good, thank you. And I said, what I do with these podcasts is I often ask the guests to fill out a few questions, and I love reading through just the journey of what people have gone through. And I say yours isn't just one or two things. There's a whole list of areas that we can cover today. So I hope I can do you justice on this episode.
Cheers, mate.
So Daryl, how I like to get things going is I like the audience to know, who is Daryl Green?
Oh, this answer could go on forever, I think. But if I just touch over it slightly, so who I am right now, well, I am a strength and conditioning coach, focusing on developing human performance, whether that be in something inside the gym, outside of the gym, helping people push their limits. Generally, it's those guys that come to me that want to do some kind of challenge that they've never done before, just whether that's because they've seen me do it, and like I like to use my experiences and knowledge from my personal experience, or they even know that that's what I focus on. I'm also a full-time firefighter on the side of that, in the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service. Um, and previous life before that, I was in the army for 8.5 years. I was a soldier in the infantry, Princess of Wales Royal Regiment, and I left that job to become or attempt to be a full-time CrossFit athlete. At that time, that was what I was good at. I was doing pretty well in the grand scheme of things in that sport, and I really wanted to push to take it further. And I needed to just remove distractions so I could fully focus on that. Um, yeah, that's pretty much who I am.
Yeah, and I love having other coaches on here because I find you find stories of why they do what they do now. And obviously, you said you deal with performance athletes of people who want to do similar things to you've done. And for me, it was kind of overcoming the fitness industry, the diet industry myths that I was stuck in. I played professional sports from the age of 16, and I struggled most of my career with high levels of body fat. I don't like the term weight gain, but I had issues with my eating, my sleeping, and I feel like it leads us down this path where we can go and help people even more because we've lived it and breathed it. Would you say that's kind of what's led you down this path?
Yeah, absolutely. So something I forgot I didn't mention in that was throughout school, I was I was overweight. I carried large amounts of body fat. Um, what and I wasn't bullied or anything for that. I was very popular at school and had a lot of friends, but played a little bit rugby. Didn't really touch much sport. Um, other, other than the school PE that you do, I wasn't part of any um, clubs or anything like that. I swam at a young age, but as senior school kicked in and just life changes, you naturally move away from things like that. Um, and I was about 14, and the school organised a day to go to Winchester, which is the one of the army training centres, to like have an experience day to see what it'd be like if you joined the army. And it was from that day on. I don't know whether this sort of mentality was already in me. I've spent a lot of time trying to think about that, but haven't really ever got to the bottom of it. But from that day, a switch was flicked inside of me, and every day from then on, I would get up at 5 a.m. before school. I would run. I would pretty much do the fitness test to get into the army, and over and over again, I'd run after school, almost really become obsessed with just this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to join the army. That's the focus. Um, and I wasn't particularly well behaved at school. I was probably, like as you are at that sort of age where you showing off in front of your friends, oh, let's all get sent out of class and go and sit at the school field or whatever. But that even changed. Like I just become so focused. It was like my behaviour changed in school. I paid attention. I had a bit more focus um, in that, and I just kind of, I don't know, created my own path. I didn't act any way other than the way that I knew I wanted to go at that time. And I was at that age. I was around 15 stone, so I was a big kid at 14. And yeah, the weight just, I was losing the weight. I was getting fitter, and um, left school straight into the army
Hmm.
at 16.
Yeah, for me and my mates, it was how late could we get to French without getting in too much trouble.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
our one. Um, so it's really relative. I know, looking back, why I did struggle. I was heavily active. I played loads of sport, and I was just eating to keep up energy wise. There was nothing, being. I don't remember multiple bad behaviors. We weren't allowed fizzy drinks and sweets and chocolates and stuff really in the house. There was a few bits here and there, but a lot of it was just overconsumption by not understanding energy balance really at a young
Mm.
age. What was it for you that kind of gained the weight struggles?
Um, yeah. I mean, I wasn't. I didn't grow up in any kind of fortunate position. I grew up, and this is nothing bad for anyone that has or is. I grew up on a council estate. My parents are separated. That was very difficult at a very young age. Witnessed them fighting, arguing a lot, even though they were separated. Spent a lot of time waiting for my dad to come and pick me up. He was always late. Like, I don't know if this is just a cascade of events that just caused food to become my thing. And granted, my parents did the best they could. When I look back at it, I mean, they did the best they could in the situation they had. A lot of the time, we are just making our best guess at the time, and there's just chains of effects over years and years that sometimes they just need to be broken, and then hopefully when I become a parent that link in the chain is broken. But I maybe that's an effect. Maybe that had an effect on me. I mean, obviously, poor quality food is a lot more affordable for people, especially when my mum was a single parent. She had me and my brother, and didn't work. Um, Suffered with a mental breakdown, and all of this throughout my childhood. So just probably decision making for her may have made it easier for me to gain the weight in terms of like food consumption. And I would remember like eating multi packs of crisps. Like that's one thing. Or like I would walk to school with a friend, and I'd go around his house in the morning. My my parents aren't there, then control it, and we'd have like a whole pack of chocolate digestives with a cup of tea before we leave them for school. It's like just yeah, that lack of education and knowledge around it,
Hmm.
and it was just common around where I was growing up that everybody was doing what we were doing, so it was it wasn't seemed as bad, if so to speak.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you've got a few areas there, and you kind of potential comfort eating, potential environment, social element. There are so many
Mm,
factors of why these things can happen, and I think it's important because you do see a lot of kids getting into sport at an early age that do struggle, that are carrying high levels of body fat, and sometimes, like you said, it can be just a knowledge based thing. It can be just an understanding of why they're over consuming, and I think it's important that we go at it from a place with no judgment, because there is a solution, there is a reason behind it, whether that is the kid or growing up, or how busy the parents are, because parenting is extremely difficult. I've got two boys, two young boys, and it's a constant learning thing and adapting. But I think it's so crucial to allow us to thrive. And you did, like you said, you didn't really struggle, you weren't bullied. Yet one thing you did say was that the army changed everything for you. Now that's a big statement to say, that this one day that you went on this school trip changed everything for you. You tell us, I know you were touching on that a minute ago, but tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it just changed the way but like my focus was, it was like, right, Daryl's going to join the army. That's where I was going. And then I had massive support from my parents at the time, which was brilliant. Support from school teachers, friends. They were like, this is amazing. You're going to join the army. Some of them were also saying, yeah, I'm going to join too, but never got to that point. And I know at that age, it's not normal behaviour to have that decision and be like, that's what I'm doing. So how that come about, I am really unsure. Whether it's like, I think what I witnessed at that day was just something that I enjoyed, felt like I could be a part of, and maybe deep down, I'm not really knowing the challenge of getting fit, losing weight, having to pass something and be successful in it. I was quite drawn to that, because that's just where my life has continued to go. And because growing up, my brother was army soldier mad as a kid. Like he was the one that everyone thought was going to join the army, and it ended up being me. But just backtracking a little bit there, I speak to a lot of my military friends that have now left as well, and sometimes it's a common theme, and don't get me wrong, some parts of the army do change people, and when they leave they do find it difficult. But I had a conversation with a friend of mine a while back, and we spoke about how, and I was going through a bit of a difficult time personally, outside of just in my personal life, and sometimes my drive can be a little bit too much, like to do things and want to do things and just non-stop on the go. And I've often heard it's because like the army made you like that. And if I think back to when I was 14 years old, yes, my decision was to join the army, and that was pulling me towards it. But maybe I just had this in me already, and that's why I was successful in joining the army. And then whilst in the army, they obviously exaggerate and build up those skills, because that's the type of people that they want in there. But to get in there in the first place, you already needed to have a glimmer of that. So I think when some people say that the army has made you that way, I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think the army recruits a particular type of person, that already has a set of behaviours or skills within them. They just draw it out and make it more more apparent, more vocal than any other skill or behaviour that you have, because that's what they require for the role.
And that's why I think it's so important that parents, schools, even like people like, you know, yourself at that age, that you take those opportunities. We talk about it a lot on the podcast, accidental intent. You had no idea that day was going to change your life. You could have gone the day before or the week before and it not had the same effect. There could have just been the absolute perfect timing without even knowing. And taking that opportunity, saying yes to that trip, going in with an open mind, was able to transform everything. And like you said, you know, you may have had those skills, but you just didn't know what those skills were for. And one of the terms that Army use a lot, and we see it all the time in advert, is "be the best." And you kind of said that they try and bring that out of you. And tell us a little bit more about that mindset, because it does bring, you know, when you think Army mindset, you think elite of the elite, right? Like it's the top level, and it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, so that be the best. I mean, it has pros and cons. As I said, once leaving the military, it's you become that what a lot of people dread and almost talk about in a negative way of being a perfectionist. You want everything to be really good. You want to win. You want it to be the best it possibly can be. Sometimes that can cause procrastination even more because you never actually do the thing. But whilst in the military, it was, for me at least anyway, it felt like it was always a competition from day one training. There's a few common phrases that would always be chucked around in training or just on courses. It would be like, it pays to be a winner, like everyone in the last 10 go again. It's like stuff like that if we were doing some kind of exercise. And that, for me, the positives outweighed any negative in having that type of mindset. What Because it just took me places. So I turned up at my unit, 17 years old, flew out to Cyprus where they were, and I absolutely loved fitness. I wanted to be the fittest I would be, and that could, from the age of 14, that from that day it just continued. So I turned up to unit. People would be going out drinking because obviously there was a big drinking culture within the military. Not sure how it is now, but at that time I was in it, it was, especially in Cyprus. We're in a beautiful hot country place. Whenever there's any downtime, and and partly maybe a coping mechanism for some people, that mine was, I would go and exercise, I'd go and train, and then that it got me a lot of respect. Um, Turning up with a bunch of new other recruits that I had gone through training with, and it starts simple, like out on the platoon runs or company runs, you'd have markers up front and back, and they would be the guys that are the fittest. I would be chose as one of those. Then just pushing forward, like I want to do the PTI course. From the PTI course, then got promoted. Then went on the promotion course. Sorry, got promoted. Then got promoted again. And if I had decided to stay in, my career could have been really successful within the army. I mean, life just took a different turn at the time, but I think carrying that mindset of be the best has put me in really good positions, gave me a lot of opportunities. Yeah, don't get me wrong, sometimes it's you can like go into like a self-destruct mode that nothing's good enough, and have that similar story, which I do think a lot of people have. Maybe it just gets exaggerated because you are wanting to push as hard as you can 24/7, and it's quite similar that people that have been in the forces do find it difficult to sit still and relax and take time. And I can only think it's because of having that sort of attitude, behavior, mindset.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this shift, because I can see from where you're talking today exactly why you went to something like CrossFit. You know, it's a high level exercise that turned into a high level competition. Again, it's the best of the best. You know, they call them the fittest people in the world. What, you know, when you're going up the ladder here, you're kind of doing everything that you kind of dreamed of from starting in the army, and then one day you went, nah, I'm not gonna. I don't want to go any further. I want to go and be a full time athlete. What was that shift?
Um, so yeah, first started CrossFit in, I think it was around 2011 or 12. Watched a video, the title "Fittest on Earth," like just drew me straight in, and I was watching these guys. I was like, wow, they are like incredible. Probably had that same thought when I was 14 years old at that day, looking at soldiers, showing me like, whoa, these guys are incredible. So yeah, watching some YouTube videos, it wasn't as big as it was then. Then contacted a local CrossFit gym and went down for a day there. Got involved. Luckily, or no, I'll say luckily, fortunately enough, because I was already very fit. It was like I was stuck in, and I was doing really well, really not knowing too much about what CrossFit was or the movements that you had to do. And people were like, "Have you done this?" Like people were coming up to me, "Have you done this before?" No, no. And it was like, well, actually, could be pretty good at this. So then I continued my career in the army until 2017, practicing CrossFit, competing in CrossFit. I went all around Europe, to Madrid, Romania, um, Athens multiple times, and CrossFit Open's the biggest competition of the year, really, where all the CrossFitters around the world enter, and there's a leaderboard of everybody in the world that does it. And then after a few years of that, I was actually moving up that leaderboard quite considerably, and within the UK. And I was like, I have, I'm in a position in the army where I want to go and do what I want to do within the army. Politics aren't allowing that currently. I also am very good at CrossFit and have a goal of reaching a certain level, which was at the time was European regional. And I having conversations with people, and they're like, "Well, you really have got to be training full time if you want to make it there." Um, and I made the very scary decision to do the 7 clicks, I think it's called, that people call it, where you sign off of the military, which just for people's, just so people know, is a 12-month notice period. So even if I did, um, so finding a job is very, very difficult, because no one is gonna, you're almost leaving on no guarantee that you're gonna walk into a job after 12 months. But that was okay for me. I knew what I was going to do. I was going to train full time. Become really close with the CrossFit gym in Portsmouth that I was training from. They gave me a key, so I could use that pretty much whenever I wanted. And yeah, when I left the army, continued to train during that 12-month period. So I'd already made my mind up to sign off to go and do this. CrossFit actually changed the format of the competition. So there was no European regional anymore, which was the competition that I had my focus to get to, and then hopefully that would then propel me even further to get sponsorships, etc. But yeah, so they pulled that. I still had qualified for a competition in Athens, and got to Athens, done the competition, didn't do as well as I wanted to, and just realised, well, now I'm done. Like, I've got competition I wanted to do is gone. I've spent all my savings, and I've still got life to pay for. I don't have a job, don't have an income, so I've got to do something. But I actually I broke down at that point in a marina in Athens. I still remember it to this day. A friend had come out to Athens with me and my partner at the time, and yeah, but figured it out and moved into coaching. That's
What
on a
was that
more
like at that point, though? Because you had the comfort of the army. I say comfort, obviously it's not easy, but you had that, you had the paycheck, you had the promotion, you had everything set. You took this big jump. This CrossFit was giving you something extra that the army obviously wasn't providing. And then it kind of just took everything away from you at that kind of that most vulnerable point, right? Where you didn't have the army anymore, you weren't training, you weren't doing both. So what was going through your head at that point in that time in the marina?
um, questioning all of my decisions. Really, that was I multiple times had thought, oh, I'll just rejoin the army, just rejoin. That'd be all right. Rejoin, which you can, and um, then I had to initially you have all these reactions like, I just rejoin the army. I'll try and coach otherwise, or get in contact with coaching jobs. Try and do some personal training. There was already a PTI within the army, so I knew I was qualified in that regard. And I guess it was, I felt almost helpless. Like, what have I just regret? There was a lot of regret um, at that moment in time. Now, in reflection, I still wouldn't change any of the decisions I had made. But initially, in the reaction, it's like, what have I done? I've not even performed as well as I wanted to in Athens. That even if subconsciously maybe my drive for CrossFit had changed a little bit once they pulled out of competition, but who knows? Um, and yeah, a lot of regret really, letting people down, especially the partner I had at the time, friends, family. Although like they were all still proud of me and what I did and what I was doing, but that I think that be the best mindset, it has that effect on you. Like, you feel like you're letting people down when it's actually you're not at all. Like, doesn't matter where you finish, what you're doing. The people that really care are still going to be proud and even look up to you. But in that moment of time, it just feels like everything's just crashing down on you.
Yeah. Do you remember the moment, the turning point, where you went back into the strong mindset and you knew or believed that everything would be okay?
Um, I think, like you say, when you said about the right time, it's just the right timing on that day to go and see the army. Something similar happened where I just had a call from a gym that had an opportunity for me to go and work there and be a coach. And potentially, if it wasn't for me being this type of athlete that people knew locally within the area, and I tried to do some personal training but didn't really know how to market, or at that time I had no idea about business coming out of the army. Like, um, So yeah, I got a call from a coaching gym, a small group personal training gym that had a slot for a coach, and they asked if I wanted to take it, and started an internship there. Firstly, it was a membership just to get used to what they do, get to know the members, and then yeah, moved into a coaching role there. And I think it was that, and people might call it lucky, and I think it's just having seeing an opportunity come about and taking it. And as I said, being known for being this athlete, CrossFitter, maybe that had an effect on actually getting the call.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because you were marketing yourself. Being, a soldier shows an element of discipline, respect, strength. Being a CrossFitter shows, an element of discipline, strength. So you're in the whole time. You are, in a sense, marketing yourself. You're kind of branding, and so it's that accidental intent. Again, all of this stuff was leading up to this moment, and as you said, looking back, you have no regrets. You won't change a thing. It's just in that moment having that mental resilience of potentially being the best, and and kind of having that fear of losing has allowed you to continue to pushing on.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. I wouldn't, that as I said, I don't think I could ever sit still. Like I'm always coming up with ideas, new ideas, maybe too much, too often, really. Um, Too much for me to handle a lot of the time. And maybe in that moment, in that marina in Athens, was really like, what do I do now? Because I had been out of the army for 5 months at that point, completely out of the army. You have a bit of leave that you can bolt onto that 12-month notice period. So officially from my last day of being a serving soldier was 5 months, and so I still really all I knew was military, army. Wake up every day, do this, do that, and almost be told what to do in some regard. Don't you don't often have to think for yourself in the army. So it was a moment where I have to now come on, let's I'll actually retract that statement, because that's one of the reasons why I left, is that I began to think for myself and see that what I wanted to do. But in terms of daily job and earning money, is potentially the easiest job. Um, but I don't think I could have sat there and not done nothing at that time. Um,
Sometimes when your back's against the wall, the only option is to take action. You know,
yeah,
sometimes it is the best position, right? Because when you're not, you feel like you've got time on your hands, and but when you're forced into that scenario, like you said, it hadn't worked out, there's no money, you've got to do something. Sitting still is not something you do. You said it multiple times. You don't sit still, which has then kind of led you to this next phase. I'm assuming has come in where I believe you've taken on Ironmans, and you've really shown that sitting still is not a thing, because obviously the events that you've taken on now, past CrossFit, are things
yeah,
of long length in time. And one bit that absolutely fascinated me, which I kind of threw into your intro, was the 5-day ultra marathon across the Arctic. Like, that stuff that you see, in the movies and things like that. So for people that maybe don't know what that entails, can you tell us a little bit about that experience? Because that's fascinating.
yeah. So just I'll talk about the switch to endurance, and then I'll explain about that,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
ultra. So um, I kind of thinking back to Athens when that happened. I stopped CrossFit for a little period, just focused on coaching. I was just doing general training, and then returned back to CrossFit. Done a few competitions again, just like almost felt like a bit of that identity thing that we spoke about before recording. this, like how I was Daryl the soldier, then Daryl the CrossFitter. There was like a draw. Like I'm not going to be the best unless I'm a CrossFitter. Like that. That was who I was. Like let's go back there. So I went back. COVID then hit. So very similar situation where CrossFit pulled the competition for me. COVID now, something out of my control, out of my hands, caused the competition I qualified to be pulled again, cancelled. And gyms were closed. It was like, what do I do? What do I do? I had to switch focus somewhere, and outdoor events were slowly coming back in. Saw an ultra in the Peak District. I was like, well, I'm going to give that a go. I'm going to get back to running, and I'm going to give it a go. Signed up to my first ultra marathon there, and yeah, it kind of went on from there. And from then, I was like, well, what's the next ultra event? Oh, triathlon, Ironman. Never done a triathlon before this. The Ironman was the first triathlon I'd done, full distance, and I headed over to Ireland, and that completed that 2 years ago. Again, that was postponed for COVID twice, so it was a long time waiting, a lot of training going on for that, and then the running and weightlifting continued and stayed, and I had a big goal of, so where can I go? Where can I take this? What can Daryl do? Is now become my sport. If I think what am I capable of? Now let's go and find out. So I saw, in fact, it was Marathon des Sables is what I saw first. I had a little look at that, little scan around that, and then that just blew out. I was like saying to my partner, okay, so what if I do one in the desert? I find one in like the snow, and I'll do both in the year. Like, that's what I'll do. Found the one in the snow, organised by a company called Beyond the Ultimate, and they actually hold 4 ultra marathons a year in extreme conditions. So they have one in the ice, which is in the Arctic Circle, desert, mountain range, and the jungle. So then it blew out of proportion even further. I was like, right, I'll do all 4 of them in the year. I had a call with the race director. I was finding out all the information, how much is it going to cost, because these events aren't cheap for obvious reasons. They're in the middle of nowhere, and so, but I was just like, okay, the Arctic one just seems incredible. I'm going to do that. Signed up, and it was about 8 months later it started, which is my most recent one, which was it was February this year. And the whole experience from the day that I entered it has it's just been an incredible, I'm not a massive fan of the word, but journey, because there was just a lot of things I had to think about. This is self-supported as well, by the way, so I had to carry all of my food for the whole day. The only thing I didn't have to carry was my sleeping bag, because an Arctic sleeping bag is huge, so they had transport taking that for us. And training was going really well, trained really hard for it. Done multiple mini events in between that, where I'd run across some mountains in North Wales. I'd do back-to-back days of like 50-kilometre runs. I know it's flat in Portsmouth, but I've got a camper van, so I would just run, and my partner would just meet me at the other end wherever I finished. And yeah, so turn up in Sweden, which is where it started, and probably the biggest takeaway I have from that event is, in fact, there's two really. So I have one where there was 40 other people doing this race. None of us knew each other, and although it was a competition, or I know it may not have been for some people, it might just be they want to go and do that type of thing. But for me, it still is a competition. I want to do the best I can, and I still want to race with within my current ability. So it's not like I don't ever finish a race being like that's where I should have been. It's like gotta be honest with my effort and the build up to it. But as long as I've gave everything, but although we were all competing in one way or another with each other, how well we all supported each other, and then whether that is because we're all there in the same situation, we've chosen to do this really tough challenge, and it's like that shared chosen hardship that just creates a almost, I don't know, a good environment to bond and connect with people. We'd finish the race every day. We'd go into our huts or cabin that they had for us, and you'd share it with 2 to 5 people, and it would all be like, "Oh, do you need water boiling for your food? You got any tape? Like, oh yeah, can you tape my back for me because the backpack's rubbing?" Like it wouldn't. Like, it was just how well we all come together. And a guy I've actually become really close with from South Africa, he lost all of his kit at the airport. So he turned up there and had nothing. And everybody was just, because there was a WhatsApp group with all of the runners in, was just like, yeah, we'll lend you this, we'll lend you that. And just helping so he could complete the race. And that was just incredible to see. And one of the things that I'll take away, that no matter how hard things are, there are going to be people that will be there to support you one way or another, and especially if it's a group environment where people have chosen to do something hard, that they they'll be there to support one another.
I think you're right. I
And
think
the
the higher up
second,
you go as well, the higher up you go, the more difficult things become. There's more of an understanding, right? And that's the beauty of sport with community, is that when you're in it, people understand it more, and are more likely then to help you out. So yeah, it's nice to see, because it's life or death out there in those type of things as well, in those type of climates. You need people around you.
Absolutely. 100%. Especially like lost all his kit, all of his warm kit, all of his dry kit, all of his food. Trainers, he had to go and buy new trainers. Like, it's just, and now he managed to crack on and do the race with everyone. And that's and we were actually sharing a cabin one evening, and we were talking about how, because he was doing the whole event for a charity back home, and he also had a similar mindset to me. He wasn't in the military, but just like to be the best, to push hard, and he would have his phone and he's having messages from back home, and it's like, it doesn't matter like what I do, where I come, like these people are proud of me, like and we were just like getting deeper on these conversations with the people that we had in the hut with us. It's just those conversations when you're in that sort of environment really do get on a deeper level than what most people talk about nowadays. And the second experience I had was how I was away from all distractions of life, and I almost like stripped right back to basics, and how much peace and clarity and how refreshing it was. So all I had to focus on was going from point A to point B, eating, drinking, staying warm enough. That's it. I didn't think about anything else. And I come back from Sweden, and it was just like an attack of all of the tasks and all the thoughts that then come back into my head of what I've got to do. And it's something I often reflect back to and be like, right, okay, how can I just reduce the level of these like stresses and tasks coming at me? What can I do? I do often spend a lot of time away in nature, and I actually take people out in that environment with me. I lead groups outside, but it's really hard to explain. But you get that peace, and whether it is like having that mindset of being so driven, so focused on being the best, and how this has got to be done, that's got to be done, it's got to be done this way, that way, specifically having the moment away from that is just so yeah, it's just peaceful, just almost like serenity type of experience where you just I don't have to worry about it, and it has helped me a lot in life to just bring things back to what is really important, because quite often it's easy for people to get pulled from pillar to post as society's full of distractions and how we should do this, how like the word should is another big one I don't like to use, but they're just imaginary things that are coming at us, and putting myself in those challenging environments and those events, they're moments where I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think about those type of things, and it's
And you see it a lot with these longer style events. If people talk about it, it is a lot deeper. It's not about running. It's not about winning. It goes so much deeper into mindset and living and beliefs. Is I guess the question is that enough for you, or is there a limit now? Is there more? Are you seeking more from these events, or have you kind of found your place now?
um, I do still seek more. Yeah, there's a drive to, okay, so I've done 5 days. What possibly could I be do? What could I do now? Like what could be done? And the question is from a lot of people is what's next now? That is, I get asked that so much. What's next? Are you done with the endurance now? What's next? Um, and that in itself is one of those distractions where you get pulled to, right, okay, I've got to do something next now. Now it's time to go and find something bigger and better to do. And I kind of have to take a moment and realize that. And I often just say to people, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do next, and just taking some time, enjoying a bit of training, um, going away, seeing things, seeing places. But what I do really enjoy now, paid a lot of money for that event, is and essentially I was okay. I had the right kit and equipment. I didn't need any major support. Yes, for blisters, because my feet got infected from blisters on one of the days. But essentially, everything I had planned and prepared for, I was okay. So I have a bit of a drive to just make my own, and make it like a whole process of designing a route, making it self-supported, maybe having a support crew, getting friends and people involved, um, as well, if it's something that they'd like to do, whether they join me for little bits of it. Um, that's sort of like where I'd like to go with it now. who knows, maybe back and do the other three at some point with Beyond the Ultimate. But
Yeah, well, obviously, because what you're doing now in performance coaching, and like you said, you are working with people like you that want to challenge, want to take on things. I know you mentioned to me in the questions, and we spoke about it briefly at the start before we came on, that you kind of had three key areas within your coaching. Like they were just quick 2-word sentences
yeah,
that you kind of use in your coaching. I'd love for you to share those with the audience today, because somebody might be listening and going, actually, I want a piece of this. Can you remember those three things? I've got them written down if you have forgotten where I'm going here.
no, I remember them. So it was be curious. If you've been listening to me this whole time, like it's always like what's possible. That is really what I mean by being curious, is because a lot of people will not do something because of an opinion, what society is normally doing, or their environment and the people that are there around. And I think that holds a lot of people back. Um, I actually said something about it today on one of my platforms, that you can't actually say that you don't like doing it unless you have really tried, because you have no evidence for that. It's just so yeah, definitely be curious. I want people to be curious, find out what they're capable of, find out what new things are going to bring to them, and then it leads me quite nicely onto the next one, which is honest effort. Because then if you are curious enough, then you truly can be honest whether you don't like it or you do it, and whether you want to continue pursuing a certain thing. At the same time, your effort in whatever it may be does need to be honest and true to you, because you can't be disappointed with the result if the effort that you decided to put in wasn't essentially the best effort you could have. And even if it wasn't the best effort you could have put in, then being honest with that too. So if I just give an example of a person that's running a half marathon, that they've also got a lot of other things that they are trying to do in their life and time. They're busy. They've got a busy job, family. And if because of that they're only managing to put 15% effort into what they're doing, when they get the result, then just be honest with that. Okay, I I achieved this because I have really got all of this going on as well. Okay, not to almost pass the responsibility of the result onto something else. I think without that honesty, you then can't really change if you do want to improve, um, because you'll just continue to say it was because of this, instead of, okay, I only managed to put 15% in because I have this and this and this. Okay, maybe I can take an hour off Netflix a night to do, or two nights a week to do a bit more training for. And the final one is fail well. I think the people's biggest performance comes from the reaction of when we don't do so well. So as you mentioned in this, is that when your back's against the wall, you're under a bit of pressure, you're almost forced to do it. Um, so I think when we fail and we are not afraid of that, it gives us the possibility to almost catapult further forward. And I know it's very cliche like that, but it definitely loads of springs, gives you a lot of lessons, gives you areas to work on, and things to do going forward. And it's linked a little bit to that honest effort. It's like responsibility, and owning that failure gives you the power and the control to take that step forward. I think as soon as you put the blame onto something else, you never have the ability to change that, because it's something completely apart from you. If you can just say, yeah, it was because I didn't do this, well, that means I have the ability to change it, and do better and push further forward, and just repeat the cycle, really.
Yeah, no, it's just they're so simple yet so powerful, and I think more people need to take those things on. There's no magic remedies. There's no these bold, crazy claims that the fitness industry makes. It's not. It's the absolute basics, and it's character building. You see a person's true character when you fail or your back's against the wall, and again that can be formed in any way of life, not just the army. It could be formed just by your own discipline and building your own actions. And I think they're three fantastic things. But before you go, Daryl, I'm going to put you on the spot here. And I want you to give me that rapid answer. I want you to be honest with your effort here. Okay. Out of those 3 remaining challenges that you haven't been on, what one would you prefer to do next?
Mountain.
There we go. Any reason?
I spend a lot of time in the mountains within the UK, and mainly for the location and the experience of that one, really. It's in Kyrgyzstan, and it's untouched, really. Not many people get there because it's very difficult to get there. And I'll just, if I'm going to put myself in a position of suffering, why not do it in a beautiful place?
There we go. So if anybody wanted to, to monitor that journey, if you do it, or if they want to learn more about DG Performance, where can they find you?
So my most popular social media platform is probably Instagram. So it's dg.performance.coaching. I'll put up most of my stuff on there, whether it's my own training, any trips that I'm organising, and if I have any spots for coaching, also a little bit of my own training, so people can follow the journey on there. Yeah, that's probably the page to go to.
Brilliant. Daryl, thank you so much for coming on today to share your story. I find it fascinating where all different levels of places that people can go to with being an athlete or playing a sport, whatever you want to classify it as. It's always fascinating. There's so many different areas, and the evolution of it as well. If people wanted to progress, you can see the stepping stones as well. So thank you so much for coming on today. I hope you enjoyed it.
Absolutely, Shaun. It's been a pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. And thank you for everybody that's joined us today. If you took anything away, please share this episode, whether you share it to your story, direct to a friend. All we're looking to do is help one person today on the Always Another Game podcast. And as I like to remind everybody before you leave, there is always another game. Thank you for joining us, everyone.